So, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us in this second meeting of the MaMo webinar cycle, Materializing Modernity, Landscape Architecture and Anthropology Intersections in 20th Century Rurality. My name is Federica Pompeiano, and I am a researcher at the Institute of Cultural Anthropology and Art Studies in Tirana, where I am developing the research project called MaMo, Materializing Modernity, Socialist and Post-Socialist Rural Legacy in Contemporary Albania, which is a project that has received funding from the European Union Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program under the Marie Curie Action Individual Fellowships. This webinar cycle, as you might notice, is organized within the framework of this project. But before starting this interesting lecture, I do have to pay some tribute to my host institutions, both in Albania and in Italy, and especially I am grateful to my supervisors, Professor Nicola Scaldaferri, Professor Nebi Bardosci, and Dr. Olsi Leilai, for their support in organizing this event. I would also like to thank the Ethnomusicology and Visual Anthropology Lab and the Department of Cultural and Environmental Heritage at the Università Statale di Milano for providing the means for the implementation of this event. At least, but not last, this meeting has also been organized in collaboration with the course Anthropology of Music, held by Professor Scaldaferri at the Università Statale di Milano. A few information about how to participate in this meeting are pasted in the chat, so please read them. And I would also like to remind you that the webinar is recorded and that if you wish to do not appear in the video, simply keep off your camera and also your microphone. But now, okay, don't waste our time and just let me thank, first of all, our today guests, our presenter, Professor Nicola Scaldaferri and Lorenzo Ferrarini. And let me introduce them. Nicola Scaldaferri is an ethnomusicologist and associate professor at the Università Statale di Milano, where he teaches ethnomusicology and anthropology of music. He's the director of the Laboratory of Ethnomusicology and Visual Anthropology in Milano. And his main research interests are oral tradition and electroacoustic music and musical practices in southern Italy and the Balkan area. He's the author of many essays and publications, and within the MaMo project, Nicola is the co-supervisor during my secondment phase at the Università Statale di Milano. Lorenzo Ferrarini is a filmmaker, photographer, and sound recordist based at the University of Manchester, where he teaches ethnographic documentary at the Granada Center for Visual Anthropology. Before moving to Manchester, he studied anthropology and ethnomusicology in Milano, where he still collaborates with Professor Scaldaferri in the LEAV research lab. His research activity is characterized by the use of photography, video, and sound recording to investigate the embodied and sensory aspects of cultures. Lorenzo and Nicola have recently published the book Sonic Ethnography, Identity, Heritage and Creative Research Practice in Basilicata, Southern Italy, which is available under open access license, so you can download for free their book, and I have copied the link to the web page for the downloading. But now I will leave the floor to Nicola and Lorenzo, and maybe Nicola has something also to say, and so please enjoy this interesting lecture that will be about sonic ethnography, and the author will show us how this there are many ways to investigate rurality, and one of these ways is exactly sonic ethnography. So please, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Federica, for this for organizing this seminar. I'm very, very happy to participate. And I would like also to thank my colleagues in Albania, because this has been organized also in the frame of a collaboration. And we have already a an agreement in the last years between the university and the institute in Tirana, and I am very happy that we are continuing to keep this connection, even though now it's not so easy because of the very difficult moment. But anyway, it's important to continue to collaborate, and I hope very much that as soon as possible we can also meet personally. So it's very strange because with Federica we are only in touch by email, through the computer, but really I hope that will be possible very soon to meet also personally. So thank you very much, and I leave the floor to Lorenzo, who will start the first part of the presentation, and after I will follow with some more focusing on some elements. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Federica, for inviting us, and to everyone who's attending. I just, so I thought I would talk about the book, which also exists as a physical book, of course, which you can also buy in parallel or instead of downloading it. I said it's not just in order to promote sales for the book, but also because some of the things we're going to talk about today have to do with the way we put the book together as a physical object made of text and images and connected to audio tracks. So a brief introduction about the book, then. I guess the simplest way of saying what it is about is to say that it is about the role of sound in the performance of local identities in Basilicata, which is the region where Nicola, together with Albania, did most of his work. Nicola is a native of Basilicata, and so he has more than 30 years of research experience there. And I joined him occasionally over the course of a good 15 years, more than 15 years actually, to collaborate with him mostly through photography, doing photography. So I'm just gonna give you an idea of what the book looks like while I speak. And actually, I'm going to do this. Info sound. There's no sound. Okay, here we go. So the book is, we call it the Photographic Soundbook. And so it combines three elements, three media that are photography, text, and sound recordings. There are different ways of combining these three media, and we can talk about this more in detail, especially if you want to ask about all these things. Feel free later on, after we are done talking. We'll be happy to answer questions. But because I'm responsible for most of the photography in the book, three main strategies consist in separating essays and photographic sequences, as in this case, and then there are chapters that mix together words and images, and there are chapters that are structured around images instead, as is the case of the photo essay about with festivals. That I'm going to talk about in more detail later. There are a number of, I'm not going to concentrate so much on sound. I think Nicola's going to say much more about that in his portion of the presentation. But there are a number of themes that I think are relevant to the topic of this series of meetings about rurality. And especially, across every single chapter of the 7 that make up this book, we had to deal with the significance of the history of research in anthropology and in ethnomusicology that took place in this region from the 1950s at least. And at the same time, we had to face the connections of this history of research with the contemporary politics of heritage that are apparent just about everywhere in all these cultural performances, festivals, and other occasions that we look at in the chapters. And the third theme that is transversal to the book has to do with the already present tradition of multi-mediated research through photography and film especially, but also as sound recording that dates back from basically the early days of ethnomusicology and anthropology in Basilicata. So I'm gonna, this is what the book looks like, and I'm just gonna jump straight into the presentation itself. And, you know, perhaps those of us who are familiar with Italy will be familiar with this name, Ernesto De Martino. You know, it's obviously just one of sharing his post. Sorry. Sorry, let me try again. I'm trying to share it full screen. Yeah, I should be able to see it full screen now. Yeah, so Ernesto De Martino is just one of perhaps the most significant of a series of scholars who did work in Basilicata. But the interest of De Martino's figure, which sometimes if you read the book might sound as though he's we're even giving him too much attention. There's obviously many other scholars who have worked in Basilicata, but it is interesting for a number of reasons. One is the lasting influence that he had on Italian anthropology, but especially we're interested in the reverberation, I guess, that is his writings and the circle of scholars and media makers that he surrounded himself left on the region today, still today. And also his, I guess, pioneering approach in collaborating with a number of image and sound makers that somehow creates a precedent for our own practice with images and sounds. But especially these writings, but all the more so in the case of photographs and films, they have created an imaginary, okay, so a set of a cultural repertoire, a set of ways of understanding the past and rurality, in particular, the word of small villages, the word of what was called folk, religion and superstition and tradition. That is still very important in Basilicata today. Not necessarily among scholars, because you know, some of these interpretations have been abundantly criticized and put into context, but certainly among local actors and people who deal with heritage, the politics of heritage, contemporary politics of heritage. So I mentioned some of the media makers that worked with De Martino, Just a series of images that I wanted to present, all from 1952. Arturo Zavattini, one of the better known photographers to work with him briefly in 1952. But then perhaps some of the most iconic images are by Franco Pina. Here, the Funerary Laments in Pisticci, 1952, late 1952. And especially I wanted to concentrate a little bit more on this image because it's particularly interesting in its afterlives. This is an image that was captioned Maddalena La Rocca, Enchantress, Fattochier, I guess Enchantress is the translation in English. And it was a very powerful visual counterpart to the writings that De Martino did on a small village in the Cini Valley, above the Cini Valley, I guess, which is still today jokingly referred to as quel paese, that village, because De Martino is one of the first to broaden the scope of this superstition, whereby just saying that the name of the village would be bringing bad luck on the person who pronounced it. Why am I telling you this is in part because today the village is the center of one of the main cultural events that animate the summer. They are called Notti a quel paese, nights in that village. So the terminology that was a derogatory terminology has been reappropriated and used with pride, as you can see in this merchandise. So have the writings of De Martino in Magic Theory from the South. And this is just an example, just an example of what you're given as a ticket when you visit one of these nights. This is basically a talisman that is described in De Martino's book, and is given in place of a ticket. So these festivals consist of open air theater, where I noticed the image of the Enchantress there in the bottom right. But the tourists are taken around the alleys of the village, and they assist to basically a performance whose actors are local people, and the texts are based on on anthropology texts. De Martino's own Magic Theory from the South, for example, is one of the sources for these pieces. This is a reenactment of a binding procedure to lift a binding, a fascino, on a member of the audience, by the way. Right, so we have, in this case, not just the reuse of an imagery that was once stigmatized and associated with backwardness and had negative connotations. The village of bad luck. This was the village of bad luck for promotional purposes, but we also have a reappropriation, I guess, and an element of pride, and within the concept of reappropriation, you have this idea that not only the negative is turned, the negative connotation is turned into an element of distinctiveness and of pride, but also that people who were subjected to negative representation are then take it in their own hands, and it's very meaningful that it's local people who star in this this theater piece. This thing is so you know, I don't know if certainly it has taken a stop with the pandemic, but it was so successful that it was able to double the population of this, which is a small village. It would, in a single night, it would take as many tourists as there are permanent residents, to give you an idea. So it would double the population of the village in one night, just in terms of audiences. And then the other thing I want to talk about is you know, in the broader scenario of the region, there have been a series of regional policies that have been put into law that recognize and finance intangible heritage. And this has set in motion a whole set of mechanisms whereby these renditions of tradition have become institutionally recognized through processes of applications and the creation of files that get submitted to a given you know institution or office. And again, the work of anthropologists and scholars in general, ethnomusicologists, folklorists, and so on, gets co-opted into these processes, so that the adjective anthropological becomes a marker of authenticity. And I think it's very evident in this poster here, which is about a gathering of masks, and the masks are called anthropological masks. So you know, the adjective that refers to the study becomes an adjective that is intrinsically connected to the object of the study. I find this very, very interesting and thought-provoking. Behind the scenes, what this means is that not only are all the historical traces of studies unearthed and you know, reevaluated and put in the foreground as a marker of continuity and authenticity. So the Martino playing a role, but you know, any anthropologist or social scientist who published something or made a study on a given tradition. There's also commissioning of contemporary ex novo new studies about a given cultural phenomenon that a local administration might want to see recognized. And this goes from very local level, of course, to the possibility of approaching, I guess, the uppermost layers of intangible heritage, which would be UNESCO and the Register of Intangible Heritage. So we are really looking very often at a complete reevaluation of the rural past and a reframing. You know, Basilicata was the place where it was Matera. Matera, again, perhaps is a good symbol as the main town of regional capital of Basilicata in the 1950s, was defined as national shame because of the living conditions of their inhabitants. And today, actually during the 1990s already, it became a UNESCO Intangible Heritage Site. Sorry, not intangible, but a UNESCO Heritage Site. So there's this transformation and revaluation that also is at work in my next example, which is that of there we go, yeah, another slideshow here. That of with with festivals, which very simple and very simply, and as in other parts of Italy, are religious festivals, mostly religious festivals, not exclusively, that take place around July and August. So normally well after the harvest of wheat has been completed, and they are most of the time centered around offerings made of ears of wheat that are seen side by side with the more common offerings of candles that one can see just about everywhere. Yeah, as in this case. And okay, so our attention to wheat festivals starts with occasional visits, but it soon became clear that they reflected broader regional processes and that they were undergoing a period of revival. What we found particularly provocative was the idea that this revival was happening. This revival of, let's remember, festivals that celebrate the end of the agricultural season, and revivals that could be possibly and have been connected to rituals of fertility, connected to the agricultural cycle. They were taking place. This revival was taking place in parallel with a clear and already well progressed decrease in the relevance of agriculture in the region. Basilicata, as other parts of southern Italy, perhaps more than elsewhere, has been going through depopulation, with people migrating away to northern Italy for a long time, but also abroad. It's been going on for a long time. So the population has very much aged demographically. And as well, there are clear transformations in the landscape, and people who have lived there for a long time are able to see the differences in what the landscape has become, with actually an increase in reforestation, for example, and a general reduction, let's say, in the surface that's been destined to agriculture, whereas other forms of extraction from the territory are being put in practice, such as dams and wind farms, and obviously as well oil extraction. Okay, so there's a revival of. Hello? Somebody saying something? Because I can't see you. I can only see PowerPoint. So if there's anything, just do interrupt, please. Okay.
I think you can proceed, Lorenzo.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I thought there's something. So I was just going to sum up. There's a side-by-side revival in these rituals that celebrate agriculture and are part of a cycle of ways of life that aren't that practiced anymore by that many people. And you often find them practiced by practice and a key involvement in by people who come back during the summer months from their permanent residence, which is abroad because they are they migrated, or their parents or their grandparents migrated. And at the same time as this is going on, there's decreasing relevance of agriculture as a way of life. That same way of life that's being celebrated is less and less relevant. So it was fairly evident to us, looking at the photographs and experiencing these festivals, that there's a celebratory element that has a strong flavor of nostalgia. People are somehow acting up, some of them at least, who haven't experienced directly that way of life, but they're setting up and performing these types of imaginaries. Up to a point they are imaginaries, and where there is a intersection with past scholarship, a well-documented tradition, this is particularly evident. So this is San Giorgio Lucano, a village. They're all in the area of Sarmento and Sini rivers, but this is where the Martino in 1960, I believe, 1960, I believe. Anyway, photographed, studied and photographed a harvest ritual that was photographed by Franco Pina. So in San Giorgio, in the village, the references to this past research and continuity with the past is visually very evident in these mural paintings that can be found just about everywhere. And I was particularly interested in these ones because they are based on 2 photographs by Franco Pina, but especially because they are painted in black and white, which is, I think, very, very meaningful in that these photographs being black and white is part of that aura of authenticity that the traditions of San Giorgio receive from this past scholarship, and there are images of this same occasion taken by the same photographer in color as well, but they're not very often they're not showed around. If you look at the at the painting on the right, for example, this is the original photo. Obviously, it's a variation, but in some ways, it's actually quite close to the photograph. This is the painter Vincenzo Blumetti working on the painting, and then not very far, literally minutes away, in São Paulo, there are situations where this past element of scholarly documentation, so the authorization of the festival, is not happening, and this actually a very similar tradition, in fact, has been undergoing difficult moments without this, without benefiting from this process of heritagization. Okay, so the institutionalization of heritage hasn't happened as much in São Paulo, which is why, especially during the early 2000s, there has been a really difficult moment. There's probably now past, but it's so interesting to see these 2 villages are literally within sight of each other, and at the same time, because of the different involvement of classical anthropological scholarship, the trajectories of their wheat festivals have been so different. Finally, I guess this is my final example. There are also situations in which there are clear processes of invention of tradition, to use a familiar expression, where, in this case, the past, the past activity of hand reaping wheat is turned into a spectacle and a competition, specifically with a commentator, live commentator, with music, of course, banners with prizes for winners. And when I'm talking about that imaginary and that, in this case, romantic understanding of rurality, I think this photograph exemplifies it quite well. There's a visual consumption as well of these situations that comes through time and again also in my photographs, especially photographs of people making images. But interestingly, hand reaping wheat is the only way you can get ears with stalks that are long enough to then make the offerings. So there's also a utilitarian side to these situations, whereby this is the same wheat that you saw actually hand reaped in the competition. It ends up in an offering, which is also a moment of sociality that is quite important for communities that in parts only meet up during the summer months when all the migrants come back. And this is another one of those examples of invention of tradition that I was telling you, which is a festival that coincides with a religious occasion at the end of August in Chiaromonte, which used to be an important agricultural village in the Sini Valley. But again, its importance is decreasing. But through the efforts of, in part, this person, Andrea Mobilio, the festival has become a competition again, in which neighboring villages bring their offerings, and then they have a tag with number, and the audience votes for the best looking one. They get a blessing from the priest, and finally they win a prize. Okay, so there's a complete re-signification and reframing of these offerings beyond the religious occasion, beyond the agricultural cycle. This is the picture with which I end the photo essay on wheat festivals, because I think it represents quite well that transformation of what rurality means today in Basilicata. It means, at the same time, what is left of a sort of agrarian idyllic scenario with shepherds and agriculture, but at the same time it means different forms of extraction from the territory that represent new economies and sources of income and energy. This is my time, I believe. So I'm happy to leave the floor to Nicola, and also as happy to answer your questions after Nicola is done. Thanks.
Thank you, Lorenzo. So please, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Federica. Thank you very much, Lorenzo, for this introduction to the, actually it was not an introduction, it was a complete description of our research and the book. And so I move to the third element of the book. As Lorenzo told at the beginning of his presentation, we have three languages mixed together, interwoven together in this research. Is the text, the photographs, and the sound. So now I move to the third dimension, which actually is the sound. Lorenzo was stressing at the beginning that really we thought about a physical book. This is not for advertising, but because really it's a quality of having also good printing of the photographs, which is different from picking them from the web. So the idea really to build a kind of narrative where you have the three elements all connected together: text, photographs, and the sound. So now I move to the sound, and dealing with the sound, it means basically listen to the sound. So a part of my presentation will be a presentation of some fragments from the sound chapters, which are part of this book. One of the point of discussion we had at the very beginning with Lorenzo when we are thinking the structure of this research was really the way to collocate the sound in relationship to the photographs and the text. And in this book, we really try to create a kind of innovative approach where the sound is not a kind of document attachment to the text or to the photographs, but we tried really to create a kind of narrative path through sound. So using the sound to explorate the rurality in this case and the situation he was describing before, but also to make a restitution through sound. So the idea was really to create some sound chapters, which are actually some compositions made by recordings coming from the fieldwork and with a post-production editing, with the idea to tell something, to restitute a part of this research to the listener. So something that you can really listen through your ears, not just reading or looking at the pictures. And so I play for you some fragments of these some chapters. And I will start with the sound chapter connected with the wheat festivals that Lorenzo was just speaking now about. And the title of this sound chapter is Dancing with Wheat. And just a minute that I put in. Okay, so in this case you have no images. I just decided to put a black screen because really I invite you to listen to the sound and to try to understand what the sound can communicate to you. In this case, of course, you have already the description of Lorenzo, so you can guess what is happening. But the sound chapter about the wheat festival is really trying to stress the idea of the mixture between the soundscape, the local, the sound of people working in the fields, together with some musical performances, which usually occurs during the work. So we have, you can listen to the noise of the people using the sickles, and they are picking up the wheat. And but this is mixed together with the sounds of, for example, of tarantella and these musical instruments, which are a part of this this ritual. And actually, the musical performance, in this case, especially that of the tarantella, is a kind of common thread that connect the different moments of this with festivals. So we can listen to the instruments and to the tarantella in the field when they are making the competition, and we can listen to the tarantella also later, for example, during the square when they are dancing with during the festival in the village. So I play now for you a portion of this this sound chapter, and really I invite you to listen and to try to understand what this experience is telling you. And I just like to mention that in this idea we worked also thinking about Stephen Feld and the theory of acoustemology, which means to give to the listening experience to consider it as a kind of a true knowledge experience. So not just reading something about a topic or looking at some photographs, but also listening. And in this case, we really try to restitute this experience of our research in the field of the wheat festival. So I play for you now a portion of this sound chapter.
Rapidi di sempre,
Eccolo qua, sta raggiungendo la meta, il campo numero 4. Il campo numero 4 sta raggiungendo con le ultime passate la fine del campo di gara. Eccoli qua, avviciniamoci da questa parte. Un applauso, un ringraziamento particolare ai compari di Caselle in Pitteri nel Cilento, con i quali siamo gemellati per una nuova gemellata. Andiamo a mietere al loro paese, loro danno questa manifestazione in una maniera eccellente. Qui abbiamo anche l'ideatore Antonio Pellegrino, l'ideatore del Palio del Milano a Caselle in Pitteri. Quindi facciamo una cosa, Caselle in Pitteri che ha ideato questa meravigliosa, anche la signora Nicola di Sant'Antonio. Complimenti. Allora quello deve dire che comunque un applauso a Giovanni! Eccoci qua, sta raggiungendo la meta, il campo numero 4, Serra Patina! Ecco la forza Serra Patina! La forza, andiamo giù avvicinarci a Serra Patina!
So we can stop here with the first portion of the this sound chapter, and I hope that you were able to grasp the complexity of the situation. Maybe it's more evident to listen to this experience that or that just listening, just reading a text or looking at the pictures. For example, at the beginning, the idea was really to give the perception of the stratification, the different layers. We have the people working with the sickles, we have the organizers with the microphone, we have the players of the instrument playing the tarantella, and we can have a true experience of this reality listening. I think it's, so maybe you can guess the idea of that, what we miss with sound chapter and the way we selected with Lorenzo also to try this third dimension of the narration of the book. So this is the first fragment connected directly with the presentation of Lorenzo, but I selected also other two fragments of some chapters to play for you now. And the second is connected to a carnival ritual with the presence of the bells, of the cowbells. Which is something that, on my opinion, it fits very well with the idea of a sound chapter, because we have some topics in this ritual which perhaps are very complex to describe in a written essay. or to explain in photographs, but we can describe, communicate much better with in sound. So the idea to create this kind of narration with sound. And this event is it's called the Campanacho. There is a chapter of the book, and this is a carnival ritual in the middle of January. All the people is wearing some cowbells and going to the street. We have lots of similar ritual in all Italy and in all Europe. It's quite common to have carnival ritual with the cowbells. But the case of this village, which is San Mauro Forte, I think it's quite interesting because we have two elements very special. One is that people don't wear masks, so you can look at the faces. There is no masks. And the second is that the way to play bells, it's not chaotic. Usually when you have cowbells in ritual of carnival, the bells are connected with the idea of chaos. So we have a kind of contraposition between the music and the sound and the noise. So in the case of San Mauro Forte, we have a quite unique situation. People without masks and no chaos. So we have a kind of identification of the participants with the bell. So the true mask actually it's a sound mask. It's made by the bell itself. And the second very interesting element is that all the groups of people try to keep a rhythm with the bells, which is quite difficult. But anyway, we have these two elements, identification with the sound and a kind of a rhythmic identity of the group of people masked. So you see, we have sound and rhythm, and it's a situation which we can try to describe much better in sound than with just a verbal discussion or with photographs. And so the title of this sound chapter is Rhythms in the Dark. And actually, we have the group of people with the bells going in the street of the village, and there is also a strong connection with the place. People carrying the bells, it's a kind of transformation from animals, because the usual way to use the bells is to put it in the neck of the animals to identify the animals. It's a kind of it's a kind of sound mark of the animal. So we have a transformation of the animal, or the men in animals. So we have people going in the streets, and each group is really making very strictly the rhythm. And when you have different groups close together, each group try to keep the rhythm. So we have this kind of very, very strong contrast between the different groups. And in this sound chapter, the idea was really to reinstitute this conception of rhythmic identity between the different group of people wearing sound masks. That means just carrying bells. And the sound chapter, so it's really built with the idea of rhythmical contrast. And at the end, it's a kind of coda. There is a fragment of field recording with animals carrying the bells. So the bells are brought to the original carrier, which means the animals. And so we have a kind of sound bringing back to the original moment. So I play for you now at the beginning of this song chapter with the rhythm, and the final portion with the animals. We are just descending the hills with the bells in the neck. Sorry. So this was the second one, and now let's move to the third sound chapter, which is made basically with archival material. And in this case, I'm very glad to speak about this sound chapter because there is also a connection with Albania. We are speaking about the story of an immigrant, Giuseppe Chiafitella. He was from an arbresh village. So the arbresh village has been founded in the 15th century by refugees coming from Albania. And San Costantino Albanese, which actually my home village is one of the arbresh villages. And Chiafitella, he was from this village, and he moved at the beginning of the 20th century to America. He spent almost all his life living there. And there was a very big community of immigrants, especially in the New York area and in New Jersey, and where they tried really to rebuild the original social connection they had in their home village. And Chiafitella had played a very important role in maintaining the memories of the village, because he was used to travel very often from the two sides of the ocean. He started to travel in the 30s. Until the end of his life, he was just spending part of his time in the home village in San Costantino and another part in his house in New York. And during his trips, he was used to make photographs, especially in the 30s and 40s. And in the 50s, he started to make some audio recordings. And in the 60s, even some film, with a camera. And so he was sharing all this material with his friends in order to keep alive the memory of the place. And this was important for his friends, but he was important also for himself. So it was a kind of way to give a meaning to his own identity. So his sound recorder was a kind of loyal companion, was traveling with him in both sides of the ocean. He was not sending the recordings, but just bringing the machine and create this kind of ritual with friends to listening together to this material. So one of the sound chapters of the book is exactly this one, Memories from a Loyal Companion, and it's made with the recordings of Giuseppe Chiafitella. And the idea in this case was really to try to create a kind of composition very close to some electroacoustic composition of the 50s, so of the period of where the materials had been recorded by Chiafitella. because at that time it was very, actually we had the birth of many experimentation on electronic music. So in this case, we are really moving maybe toward a more compositive approach than in the other sound chapters. And so the model was really the electronic music of that period, where vocal sounds are very, very important. So in this case, there is a use of many recordings of the voice. He was recording the voice with the different languages. You can listen to can recognize the Italian, the Arbrecht language, so the Albanian friends can recognize the old Arbrecht voices, and the English maybe with a very, very strong Italian accent. But we have also some very important sound marks of the village, something which connects directly to the original rural context. So for example, the bells of the church during the Sunday, which is a very, very strong sound mark in the theory of Raymond Scheffer in his famous book about soundscapes. He's really stressing the importance of the church bell as a very significant sound element for memories. We have also the bagpipes, the caramunza in the local Arbrecht name, which is connected with the shepherds and with the original soundscape of his home village, together with all the voices of his friends and relatives. And he's recording everything and carrying all this material to United States to bring the memory and to reinforce the memory of the place. So this sound chapter is an attempt to restitute you the complexity of this sound situation of the recordings of Giuseppe Chiafitella. So I play a portion of this sound chapter.
This tape recording machine, we are sure living in a marvelous age. An age when even if we are separated from our friends and relatives by a great distance, through this wonderful contraption called the tape recording, you will have the great pleasure of hearing the voice of your sister-in-law, your pretty niece, and your well-behaved nephews, who so much want to express in their own language their affection and their great esteem for everything you have always done and are doing for them. Your niece and your nephews are fine and well-liked youngsters.
So del taste fievani, che in dit me buco, per piece dei chops, caramuziani, che avevo a caramuta terea, che parla le caramuta
Cogliamo l'occasione per domandare al nonno di Rocchino, precisamente Michele Scutare, che impressione ha avuto, quale effetto ha fatto la voce di suo nipote ascoltandolo dopo l'incisione.
My excellent friend and teacher of English, Joseph Chiafitella, is giving me the appointment to present to you my uncle Pasquale Di Burgio. It is an honor for me to do this and, above all, to speak with you in English, a language that I have learned at school, but above all with my teacher Joseph Chiafitella.
U sërgjeme sorisidore sorasunda, klem fritur kazote jih Don Antoni Guleme. Të guidarim shtasir I bukur që arbresh ndërmer buren me buntatën e tire, që sempre ndihën krishën tënë.
E ti cum va pepini ka trosh ancora në 100 vjet.
Speriamo sapini sempre prej të nzoti që ka t'ju ndihën e ka t'ju bekonj, se na jeme
Vita contenta, coronata da ricchezza, felicità eterna.
Dico tradizione perché le feste che si sentono, quelle che sono ovattate, per così dire, dal sentimento più fine, rientrano nelle abitudini, nelle buone abitudini degli amici
che con queste feste si riuniscono per festeggiare un nome, ma più ancora per festeggiare un amico.
I am the son of Ernesto Nicola, and I am studying foreign languages. I take the opportunity to send to everyone the
ma vieni accorto, ma si disturbani. Ma io che il coraggio a te è tritiriare.
Che era garrafino.
Sai bene scuola legna.
Bene Francesco. Gruppo Giovanni. Non le carnavali.
Fine bene, vieni allegramente.
Andrea Carrotti.
Devi fare il vento aiuto.
Non le giacque.
And now I am the great pleasure to introduce my artist Here he is.
E fine state convertire. A dotisha tita via a forse che largo tanto come si tri. Bravo!
Il caro zio Peppo Chiaffitella ha voluto eternare con queste melodie, con questi canti, incidentali sui nastri che poi porterà con sé. Quanto ancora varcherà l'oceano e lascerà questa bella patria, l'Italia, che ebbe l'onore di dargli i natali.
Terra straniera quando Maria, quando ci salutiamo non so perché.
Chi cantò questa bella e sentimentalissima canzone è stato il mio cugino Minguccio Chiaffitella, che si trova qui da Milano per passare le feste di Pasqua tra i suoi amici e i suoi cari di famiglia.
Non ti ricordi più quegli occhi belli.
Noi ci auguriamo che egli, giungendo nella terra straniera, in un momento di nostalgia, in un momento in cui il suo cuore sarà preso da una certa tristezza, voglia ascoltare quelle che noi abbiamo voluto fargli sentire, modestamente, poveramente, ma suonati e contato col cuore, si voglia ricordare di noi.
Okay, this was the third example with the story of Giuseppe Chiaffitella and this huge amount of suggestions from the voices, sounds, telling a very, very complex story, and with all the emotional charge that we can recognize in this recording, and from the voices, but from the sounds, from the church, the bell church, from the Zampogna. So the sound is very important in this case to maintain the connection between the original rural village in southern Italy and the diasporic community in Northern America, a rural village with this double identity. So we are speaking about Italian and Arbrecht heritage, all mixed together and restituted to the diasporic community thanks to the recording. I think that maybe in this third case you can guess, I hope, the idea of the sound chapter, something that just can use sound to tell you a story. And this is a very also sad story because we have immigrants, and but it's very very, very meaningful. So I think that my time also is over, so we can stop here. And as Lorenzo, I am also happy to answer if you have some questions. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nicola. Okay. Thank you to both, because actually I'm still reading your book. I'm not finished yet, but I've started, and it was simply amazing, amazing under so many aspects actually, because really what emerged from your book, but also from your presentation, is that listening actually constitutes a distinctive way of knowing, and also a distinctive way of exploring our realities, and not only in practice, but also as you demonstrated by reading a book, because in this book you really mix photos, so images, text, and sounds. And I really appreciated the fact that you can skip and between images, texts, and sounds. And for instance, in my case, for what concern Schiaffitella chapter, I first read the chapter and then I listened to the sounds. And really, I understood what Nicola said about the capacity of sound to trigger deep emotions, because what Schiaffitella did was exactly that, recording voices in order to strengthen the relationship between a community that actually is split between different places in the United States and birthplace. But not only, and I think that, I don't know if you have had the same impression as mine, but what just was so clear in my mind, that it was that maybe Schiaffitella was aware about the fact that he was not only strengthening relationship or keeping relationship between a community, but also like saving traces of a kind of reality that was really quickly disappearing in an Italian context where modernity was changing the local communities, the landscape, as you also showed in your photos. So this was really, really interesting. I mean, the working through a personal archive was super, super interesting. And instead, if I may, I don't want to monopolize the discussion and the debate, but I was so enthusiastic about your work that I would like also to say something about the wheat festivals, because again, in this case, I started to look at the images, and then I read the text, and again, it was amazing, because I mean, of course, I have like, I mean, I've grown up in countryside, so I have rural origins. My birthplace is a really small village in the Piedmont area, so I was used to this kind of festivals, but not yet in like festival that were like how do you say? Come si dice? Resi spettacolo. I don't know how to say in English. I mean, it was not yet a reinvention of tradition for people or for tourists, but it was really a kind of festival for locals and for the ones who contributed to the harvest or to the countryside works. So again, it was really emotional to read about those festivals and about those practices. And yeah, so thank you. I don't know if there is someone that wants to intervene or comments, and in the chat I cannot see any questions or comments, but feel free to open to switch on your microphone and ask and or make some comments. No one? Okay, I don't know who is Galaxy A70, but okay, you can...
Hi, I am Michaela.
Okay, hi Michaela.
Ciao Nicola, ciao Lorenzo. Hi everyone. Thank you for this interesting presentation and for your work. I have been lucky enough to attend some of these feasts during your research project, if I'm not wrong, in 2018, and I actually remember the photos and also the live scenery and the live sounds. So congratulations on this contribution. Well, I have a question for Nicola regarding the archives, and I think that we're working with both archives and ethnographic sound recording, it is one of the most interesting elements of this research. And I was wondering, are there other archives such as chiafitellas in those areas? Are you planning to work on this kind of let's say a path?
Okay.
Okay. Now
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michaela, for your question, and thank you very much, Federica, for your remarks. Yes, actually, Michaela was in Basilicata with us when we were doing a part of this research, and so she knows so well. So actually, this is the only archive that I know by now which this kind of elements, and it was a very strange story because for me it's a kind of a family story. I remember Giorgio Fitella. He was a relative of my aunt, dear Stella, and she had all his material in his house, in her house. So maybe almost 30 years after Fitella died, we realized the importance of this material. And the last discovery has been done just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, where Stella discovered the very last films. It was quite amazing because there were color films of the 50s. So I think it's quite unique. There are many archives, and in the last years we have many projects about folk music who try to valorize and to recover and to digitalize archive. But for the moment, this is a quite unique situation that I know. And to be honest, I am not so. I'm not sure that I will do other research like that, because it was very engaging, very tiring, in several aspects, very, very emotional. So I think that working one time it's enough. But I would like also to thank Federica for your remarks about the switching, the listening, and starting from photos, because I think for me, and I think also for Lorenzo, this is a very important feedback, because our idea was really to try to make something where you have a kind of equivalent balance of the different language. So you can just start looking at the pictures with festivals and after move to the text, or starting with listening the Cafitella. So it's a very, very important feedback. Just one thing, more thing about Cafitella and the idea to create sound monuments. Cafitella was making his recordings in the same period of the research by Ernesto De Martino. This is important to make a connection with all the discussion introduced by Lorenzo. So we are in the 50s, where we have changes in the rural South. So he was absolutely aware of this process going on and recording voices. We have very, very important recordings about music. For example, the Albanian friends know the story of Costandina Doruntina. The first important integral recording of the ballad, more than 17 minutes, has been done by Cafitella. It's the only case. So he was not aware of save the tape, but he was aware of the importance of this song. So actually in the Arbrecht village, the first recording of this important ballad has been done by Chiafitella in the 50s.
Thank you.
We have another question, so please, Anissa.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nicola. Hello, Lorenzo, and thank you for the presentation. I was thinking of something to ask, and then I thought maybe not, but you just mentioned now that the archive was both visual, so it was a video, meaning merging the visual and the sound. And I originally thought it was only sound, and that to me made sense because you're doing a soundscape, so you like detach sound, image, and text in a way to give the chance to let's say, digest them separately. But in this case, you had the archive combined. You had both the video and the sound. So what made you go in a direction towards separating the image from the sound? Why doing a soundscape and not doing a documentary maybe on the issue?
Yeah, this is a good question. And so actually in the book there are also the photographs by Chiafitella. So it was the choice of my presentation now to present you only with the sound, also because a matter of time, but a selection of the archive, of the photographs archive, is on the book. And with Lorenzo, one of our projects actually is also to make a documentary about Chiafitella. So actually we started to make something, and Lorenzo is filming, and I don't know if Lorenzo wish to tell something about this point, but in the future, yes, the idea is really to explore also the other dimension, especially the filming aspect of Chiafitella. And about the photos, there are some photos in the book.
Yeah, it's just because it made sense in the frame of the book to work mainly on the sound recordings and some of the photographs, very small number of photographs. But for this idea of documentary that we have been working on and off for a few years now, we have 3 media: photographs, sound recordings, and film. But we also have a large amount of writing, diaries, letters, writings on the back of photographs. He would write everywhere. He was a prolific writer. We have testimonies from the people who knew him. So actually, the difficulty in the project is that it's just too rich to come out with a simple storyline or a simple narrative. It's an ongoing process of discovery, and it's going to take some time, but there is a documentary in the works, yes.
Thank you.
Someone else that wish to intervene, please raise your hand. No one? Maybe? Would you like to add some comments? We cannot hear you. Wait.
Do you hear me now?
Now, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I wanted just to say that I enjoyed very much the presentation, and now I'm thinking. A lot of things come in my mind, but I like very much the atmosphere and this idea of having those 3 levels. Integrating, bringing together the idea of text, images, and voices. And that is very, it is very fruitful approach, because it brings to you a lot of the atmosphere, what happens in daily life. And I like very much the concept of informal rurality and this idea of plurality. I have I had the same question that Anissa raised, so I have no question on it, because I was thinking on that direction. Why not video or something that can bring together both, in a way, text, not text, but the narratives, I mean, the word and image and the sound. But it's clear, I mean, to me, because I know the importance, and I think it's very important to bring the voice in the center of discussion. And I think it's kind of a need in anthropology, in general speaking, to put attention to listen more to what is happening in daily life. And I like very much this, I mean, comparing what happened before and what happened now, and the role of anthropology in generally, how the people used or what happened now in this place because of anthropological literature and so on and so forth. So I have that good impression that is, and I'm very happy that we are together and we had a chance to discuss and to hear and to listen to this lecture. And thank you very much to Lorenzo, to Nicola, and to you that you make possible for us to be and to discuss together.
Thank you, Nebi. So,
thank you very much, Nebi. You have a fantastic archive in Tirana.
Yeah,
so really,
it's true.
It's one of the most amazing that I.
That is true.
So it's amazing with so many important recordings materials, and really you should think about the idea of put this in circulation and to develop some research about and some projects, because it's really hugely important.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk together.
Yes, maybe there will be room for a ERC grant after this project.
Yeah, that's true. And we are working also now in this project that today we are in the field. We have been with Nicola and other colleagues and collecting more images and voices, which is another, let's say, we are doing our best to enrich our archives. And that's the idea. Let's hope that in the future we can share more our ideas on archives and also in this project that we are working. But thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
So it seems that there is no other questions, and I would like again to thank you both, Nicola and Lorenzo, for your contribution in this webinar. And I would like to remind to the participants that there will be another meeting this week on Thursday at 5 p.m. And there will be two guests again. One will talk, it is Cristina Pallini, which is an associate professor from the Politecnico di Milano. And the second guest is Axel Fischer from the Free University of Brussels. And they will present their contribution about another European funded project, which was about modernist rural landscape. So I hope there will be the chance to see you again on Thursday. So thank you to all of you. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.